Hey there, welcome to another episode of Divine Design Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Morales, and I'm so excited to bring you today Paul Fritz with Exp Realty. We're with the same brokerage, but why I brought him on is, number one, thank you for having me on your podcast, which is Scotch Tape.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on there.
Yes. So thank you for that. And Paul and I kind of, you were at EXP, I think, before I was at EXP. And I remember meeting you for the first time. I think we were at some type of seminar. But you had come up to me, or maybe I'd introduced myself to you, but you were kind of new to, I think, this area? Or what, maybe it was...
Not necessarily to the area, but I was refocusing on the area. Whenever I started, I did all of DFW, and in 2017, I went to EXP, and that's when I said I really want to focus on Waxahachie and Ellis County.
Okay, perfect.
Everywhere.
Because this is where you live.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I
So
live
you
in
want to work and play
so
where you live.
Here.
Yes. And so, well, thank you for having me on your podcast. But it prompted like, hey, wait, because not only did he interview me, but I'm sorry, Paul, but I kept his ear and just kept on going for honestly probably 2 hours. Paul was probably lady, get out of my house.
Not at
like
all. It was a great
conversation.
Great conversation, good stuff, and it'll probably wind up being 2 episodes maybe on my podcast.
Really?
So part 1 and part 2, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. And we need to take note because really what I'm doing is we're kind of learning from other people. And so that was one reason why I wanted to invite you too, so that you could kind of see our setup, see what we're doing, and just kind of take notes with each other. But when I was on his podcast, what we did was we talked about a lot of things. I learned a lot about you. Yes. And so excited about you and your future and where you're going and how God is actually, you're walking with him and how he's changing your life. Absolutely. But you had made some comments about, God actually getting you into real estate and what you do to allow him to bring you your clients and things of that nature, which definitely spurred into more conversation because I'm going to say, now on my team, before our team meetings, we do pray. And one of the things that I ask God daily is like, just bring the right people into my path that I need to help. And,
Absolutely.
Or that use me as a vessel, but that I need to help and vice versa. Absolutely. And what I find is he does that and he does it on a daily basis. But I'm going to let you kind of chat. I want to know how God said, Paul, get into real estate and kind of how you run your business. And honestly, let's talk about what spurred your podcast as well.
Okay.
So
I'll take it from the beginning. Originally, I worked for a company that did document management. So what that means is we scanned documents, we did coding in databases for the documents, printed documents for law firms.
Okay.
I found that job.
Boring.
It's very interesting. Not boring.
No,
at all.
it may be. Maybe the documents we're scanning might be interesting, but go ahead. I know. I'm sorry.
Repetitive. Well, and it was my first real corporate job. This is 20 plus years ago. And I worked my way up in that company into the production manager side of it. Okay. And then we started doing facilities management, and that was for real estate law firms. Okay. So I got to interact with the real estate attorneys, and I just got to talk to them on a daily basis. What is it you do? How, trying to learn how they invest, what they're in. They got money. How do I do that? How do I be an impact?
Okay.
Right?
So you wanted to learn about investing.
Yes. Investing in real estate. And I learned that most of the wealthy people, at least all of them I talked to, kept it and gained it in real estate. Right. So I'm like, okay, how does this work? And I'm talking, this is for, I'm going to throw some names out there like Winstead, Minnick and Sechrist at the time. I think it's Winstead PC now, huge real estate firm in Dallas. Trammell Crow, the Hunt family, like doing work for them. Right. And they started rebuilding Parkland Hospital, Old Parkland in Dallas. And I got to be a part of that, seeing how that works. So I'm like, maybe commercial real estate, which God then had an introduction through my sister-in-law, who she worked for at the time, to a company called Carlin Development, and they did commercial development. So we were doing the document management for them. I just went and spoke to Maria, she was the general manager, I guess, for the company at the time. And she's like, we would love to have you, I'll teach you property management. So I transitioned from that into commercial real estate. Okay. And I was there 5 or 6 years. I got to learn a lot really fast doing, we primarily did retail, but I was the office or the property manager for 2 office buildings, several retail sites across the United States, working for the development side, like tying up the land.
Okay.
You know,
this is cool.
Yeah. Building targets. So
this is not boring. This is cool. Okay.
Yeah. It's all, you know, I'm making it very succinct. So along the time there were some times where it wasn't so cool. But anyway, started building targets, shopping centers. The last one we worked on was in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So I got to travel the United States doing that kind of stuff. And then one of the people at our small group from church did residential real estate. Okay. And I was kind of getting burnt out on the commercial side, especially I was the guy that had to go put the chain on the door for the Chinese restaurant when they didn't make rent. And I had to be the one to look the lady. This is a true story. I had to look the lady in the eye and just tell her, I'm sorry. You didn't pay. Not only can you not stay, we're taking all your equipment as well.
Oh, no pay, no stay.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but looking at it on a higher level, I could see the corporate structure that kind of caused that. And that just wasn't for me. Got to do my first deposition with some of those tenants, like being up there. I'm like, that's not what I want.
Right.
So anyway, the Stephen Nieves, he was in our small group at church. And he had said, hey, you know, why don't you try residential real estate?
Stephen. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
So in the course of working for the property management company in Texas, you have to have a real estate license to be able to collect rent for a third party. So if you work for the developer or for the property management, you don't have to, but to go on to do other things, I needed that license. So I was like, I'll just go ahead and get the license for that.
Okay.
So I did it, and a year later is when Stephen invited me over to do the residential part.
Okay.
I was like, okay, so I heard the whole story, you know, save up 3 months worth of expenses. You know, you're not going to do any business, you know, your first month or two. So I was like, man, you know, I'm salary, you know, all of my budget is spent on everything. I don't really have the money. And here's where God really stepped in. I can look back now and see that each one of those appointments, the attorneys I talked to, Robert Carlin and Maria Hicks that took me on at Carlin Development, those were all appointments of God, right?
Nice.
But we had in that commercial company, we had property that I didn't even know existed, right? That was just being held as raw ground. And one day they sold it. I didn't know. And Bob Carlin came into my office and he handed me an envelope. Okay. This is at the time I'm like, how do I save the money? How do I go into business for myself? How do I do residential real estate?
Okay.
Right? He hands me an envelope and he said, hey, we sold whatever the property name was. I don't even remember that because when he handed me the envelope, and this is where I kind of get the tingles in the feels. Whenever we were both holding it, I heard clear as day in my head, God speak to me and say, do not doubt the ways in which I can provide.
Love.
I don't talk like that. That's
right.
Me.
You're like, that's not, yes.
That is not me. That is God speaking to me. And whenever I took that envelope, like I was just overcome with emotion. I couldn't really speak. I barely got out. Thank you. Right. And I'd been praying and working in this small group, really rededicating my life. I had started tithing, and there's a ton of other stories we'll get into about what happened when I did that. But about real estate, that check was exactly what I needed for my 3 months of savings.
Isn't that crazy?
To go into real estate for myself.
He's unbelievable how he works.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I took it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to jump in. I've got the savings.
Okay.
And I'm going to jump in and do it. So I called Stephen. I'm like, hey, I'm in. What do we need to do? We got everything set up. You know, I had to catch up on some classes and all that. But went over to Keller Williams with him and on his team. And I think I closed a deal within a month. Okay. And within 3 months, I was already to the point of I was making what it was I was making before.
Wow.
So there was like no downtime, no transition, which never really happens in real estate, right? And then from there, it's just been a journey of continuing to trust him and him continuing to grow the business.
Yes.
And you spoke about the prayer. So every day when I do my affirmations and kind of my build the day out, my prayer, I feel like he's called me to encourage, enlighten, and empower people.
Absolutely. I feel like the same way. He must be like to all of his children.
Yeah.
You know,
like, this is what I've called you to do.
So
every day it's God, put the people in front of me that you want me to work with, that I can help, who I'm going to encourage, enlighten, and empower, whether it's real estate or something else.
Right.
Just put them in my way. And in the beginning, it was a lot of single mothers, disabled veterans, lower priced properties that a lot of agents might pass on, or, you know, it takes longer to do the deal.
Yes.
But I kind of built my business off serving those people, and now it's come full circle.
Yes.
And it's just been blessing after blessing.
And I think it is amazing if you truly have a servant's heart and you truly care. And I tell my team all the time, like, people, that saying, people don't care about what you know until they know that you care,
Right.
or, and really coming from a place of a servant's heart. But that's one thing that I loved about hearing about your story when I was sitting in your house doing your podcast, and we just, and Chrissy Morales went off on a tangent, talking. But those are some of the things I love, that you're very passionate. You're passionate for God. You're passionate for people. You're passionate for a lot of things. And not to mention, you are doing a lot of things in the community. You also have I know, like a closed Facebook page for investing, but you're a giver. And I love that.
Well, thank you.
Because I feel like you got a lot of takers out there. And here's what I find. I mean, I'm a huge giver, in time, money, resources, whatnot. Sometimes people on my team are like, why do you give that person the time of day? And I'm like, sometimes I don't know. You just feel like, that's what I'm supposed to do. But it's been, just the things you learn, from people, and by definitely giving back. It's interesting because I'll be talking at Listings and Lattes in February for Fidelity National Title. So I'm going to be, the speaker there. And, it was kind of like, Jill's like, hey, what's your topic going to be? And so it's going to be an interesting topic. It's got to be colorful, Paul. Right. It's probably have a cuss word in there.
One or two.
Because, just got to be a little colorful because I feel like sometimes to break things up, to be able to, because we got to pay attention to God, but we got to do some things out there, that get people to pay attention, because most people, I feel like, are paying attention, but not paying attention as much. I feel like so many people are so self-absorbed and, self-centered, and it's all about them. And I feel like that's really where we're walking, today a lot. But there's a lot of people that are trying to make a difference, that are trying to really, truly bring people to the Lord and love one another, because that's truly what it's all about. But tell me, because here's what I find. The more that I go on my, real estate calls, real estate presentations, whatever it is, I may be meeting somebody, I am definitely chatting more about the Lord and how the Lord is changing my life and whatnot. What do you find when you go out there? Are these easy conversations for you? Does it come up? Does it not come up? Talk to me about that.
Sometimes it comes up naturally and organically. Honestly, a listing appointment, it's a little bit easier because you see their house, you see their decorations. Do they have stuff on the walls? What does their home look like? What is the energy you feel, right? But I feel like in that prayer and what God's led me to, most of the people that whether it's buyers or sellers that I work with, are already, believers at some level and some kind of faith. And He's always found a way to bring it up, right?
Right. Right.
And I love to be able to share that with them. Number one, it makes it a lot easier. You're on the same page, and they have faith in something greater than them. So regardless of the outcome of the listing or the buying process, because they don't all sell and they don't all buy. Right. At the end of the day, it may not be right for them. Right. But it opens up opportunities to encourage people. Like, I've gone on listing appointments, looked at all the information. The people want to sell the house. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Right. It's better for you if you refinance or keep it. And they're like, well, why would you tell me that? Well, now they trust you. Right. They say, well, here's all the reasons. Right. One in particular, I'm not going to say any names. She had a husband who passed away, and the husband had military benefit and things like that. So if she would have sold, wouldn't necessarily been able to roll all that into the new house. So it would have cost her more money. And we've actually grown a relationship out of that. And through that, with God got introduced real quick, and come to find out a lot of her relatives are in the church and in the faith. And just God gave me words to give to her in that moment to let her know that it was okay. Right. And she was just looking at me like, I can't believe that you said that, or that. Wow. How is that possible? Like, just being open to the Spirit to moving.
Yes. And see, and I think you're a great agent, but I think that's where the great agents come from. Like I say, that servant heart, but also we are bound by ethics, number one. And number two, we have to represent their best interests, and we cannot put our back pocket before them. And so that's really what that is, by you telling, like, because I do that all the time. Like, I've got one person right now that actually that I'm like, man, I don't know. I mean, you're sitting pretty right where you're at, you know, and whether or not you really, really need to make this move, it's just circumstances that are pushing that way. But all in all, we're having conversations about possibly taking that house off the market. But I think people do appreciate the real, the raw, and it really is about, you know, helping people and helping them make the best decisions for their family, whatever that may be. And sometimes the best decision is don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, don't do it. But maybe I can give you resources to help you in this respect. Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about how you're ingrained in the community and some of the things that you're doing. I had Jennifer Salzman on, and you are a board member of the Heights. And so it spurred conversation about you, and I'm like, oh, lo and behold, you know, I'm getting ready to be on his podcast on Friday. And you helped me with a few things on, giving me information, kind of enlighten me on a house that I have that I was like, hey, look, I want to do this with it. But I had a vacant property and that I was leasing out. And I just...
Wasn't that amazing timing? That
awesome.
lined up?
Okay, and so that's it. It is all in God's perfect timing and perfect place. Yep. You know, who would I would have never thought that this person would have walked into my home, told me this, and I was walking into your home on Friday. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. But that's how God works. And you got to pay attention to those things too, to recognize, okay, wait a minute. You know, he's orchestrating all of this, whether it's good or bad and whatever we need to grow and learn from. But talk to me a little bit about that, and how did that happen for you? And then I want you to tell me, I know, sorry guys, but about your tithing story too. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the Heights, and I'm sure she talked about it. It's going to be on that podcast.
Yes.
So I'm not going to go too many details.
Yeah, we're going to talk tons about it.
But it helps victims of domestic abuse, right? And one of the problems is, where do they live? They can't stay at the house. It may be dangerous. So there's another individual that works at the Heights. She's over there now, that we had met years ago, and we had contributed to her charitable organization, BRAW, Believing Restoration's Attainable, through, just monetary donations, clothing, Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving dinners, things like that, which we met again through another God-ordained, orchestrated somebody in our small group that went on to know her. She brought us in, and whenever I was talking to her, she's like, you need to talk to Jennifer Salzman. They have this project, and here's what they're going to need. So I'm like, okay. Years before, God had already set up where we worked with, through some of our investment properties, housing, like public housing, a voucher program. And then COVID hit, so there was a big, halt to all of that. Right. And then as soon as COVID was over, we went back to the landlord forum for the housing authority. And one of the people that came up and spoke was speaking about emergency vouchers for victims of domestic abuse. And I'm like, wait a minute. This all lines up.
Yes.
I've already had the properties approved, and we've already worked with the program. So I'm like, how can I use this for the Heights project once they need to get to the next place for residents? And so we've started working with them so that they can get the people into the program, to get them the voucher, to get to the investors. And here was my next hurdle. I don't own hundreds of houses that are just sitting vacant in Ellis County, right? So I'm like, okay, now I have to go find investors, because the other thing is I'm on the board. I can't go make money. My goal is not to make money or to profit off that. It's to solve the problem. But I saw the opportunity for the investor to be guaranteed to be paid, to guaranteed to have 12-month lease after 12-month lease. The need is that great. So that's part of why we formed our investor community. So that led to
I didn't know that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So that's like, what do we do? And the other part was the story I told you, the lady in the neighborhood who just walked up to me one day and said, I want to invest. Yeah. How do I do that?
Right.
I'm like, okay, is this something I'm supposed to do, guy? Because before that, I didn't really work with investors, right? It's, not that there's anything wrong with working an investor, but it's a whole different niche market.
Yes, it definitely is.
With normal buyers and sellers.
Right.
Okay, ma'am, I'm supposed to do that. And so that's taken off. We've had that for a couple of years now. We're about to open it up to the public, not just our little closed group. But then you walked through the door and you're like, how do you know, Jennifer? And she told me to talk to you and I got this. And so you have a property that may be the perfect fit for that program.
So I have been sitting here going like, okay, I have one vacant property and this was laid on my heart that I needed to do this. And I wanted to go strictly to somebody who had been like domestically abused, a woman with her children. And I said, this would be perfect. You know, I don't have to, I've got a mortgage on it, but I don't have to extremely positive cash flow on this. This is something that was laid on my heart. And I thought, as I have more vacancies, you know, maybe I would somehow, you know, do this. And I just thought it was interesting because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know. And this is something, and honestly, this property has been vacant for some time. And I'm like, Lord, what are you doing with this? Like, I have a mortgage payment, but it's just been like, no, don't rent it. Don't rent it. And I'm like, okay, but Jennifer, so I'm asking questions and I was talking to other people about this, like, how do I form this? And God was bringing me the people, but I talked to Jennifer and then it, you know, the last person was you. And I thought, wow, this is just totally interesting. You know, how he works, that he laid it on my heart, but then he was bringing the people. Now I have to be patient and I have to be still and I have to be listening and seeking and paying attention, you know, all the time. But I just think it's amazing, you know, how he works when, you know, you really, your heart's right. It's what I'm saying. Like you are just a servant for God.
Yeah, when you're just letting him direct you.
And that's what it is, letting him direct you and navigate you.
Yeah. And it's been probably a year since I got all that lined out, trying to find a property and trying to find investors. And, you know, the market went stupid crazy high. Everybody who had an investment property sold it, and it was so hard to buy an investment property at the right price to make it work. Nobody wants to lose money. And so I had started getting kind of, man, maybe this isn't going to happen.
This is going to happen,
Maybe this was just something I needed to learn to apply to something later. I don't know, And then you walked in, and so now I'm like super recharged, and we went and bought another, well, it's under contract, another property. Like, I think this can really come back now and something we can provide. And maybe I have to do it. And then show, you know, proof of concept. So map it out for the other investors. Like, here's how you do it. I promise you, you're going to make money on it. And you're not going to make as much, but you're going to serve the community in this huge
but it'll be an asset. It is, and it's a need. And as long as, you know, and I think people that just have passion for those, you know, types of individuals or whatever it may be, that's where I feel like, man, this is something that I feel wholeheartedly like I need to do. And so really what it's spurring for me, honestly, Paul, at this point in time is not only that pick up more in single family residence, but it's actually spurring me like, no, I need to do some type of, you know, small development or whatever that may be. So we'll see. I mean, I'm looking for some acreage and seeing, you know, what, you know, working with county and whatnot and just seeing what I'm going to be able to do. But I'm thinking of like a little ranch or a little compound or a little something with houses. Been
working on that for about 8 years for disabled veterans.
Have you?
I'm trying to build a tiny home community.
I don't know.
I'm like, if you could build that little community, like a little tiny home community, have like free housing, maybe even for a nurse or somebody who's qualified to be on that premise, because a lot of disabled veterans that I've come across and served have been either single or don't have kids or dependents that live with them. They don't have a lot of money. They need things and they need community. So if you could get them, you know, a little 500 to 1,000 square foot house that would qualify for VA financing, get them their own little yard, but be in that community around other veterans and have the events and the activities that they build camaraderie with. I mean, that's a solution. I've got a veteran right now. He only qualifies for 150 and there's nothing out there. And you feel terrible because you can't find them something. But a solution like that'd be great. So maybe we can talk about that
maybe we
later
do need to talk about that. So this is great. I'm glad that you're on the podcast and we're kind of doing this because it sounds like some of our visions and, you know, or whatnot are kind of the same, you know, which I think is fantastic. So, okay, so you started in the commercial and then you segue into residential. How long has it been that you've been just servicing really residential? I'm sure you still dabble in commercial a little bit.
Not a lot, not anything big. If it's small commercial, I haven't kept up with that commercial side like I should, right? And I can't go serve a client trying to build, you know, a huge office building or that has an office building that's trying to get tenants, right? Because it works totally different. So I'm not the attorney and I can't keep up with that. But small commercial, I've helped several people buy like little small places for like the electric company. I helped them buy a place out in Everman where they can build their company and grow through. So small commercial, nothing big. But residential, I've done full-time since 2014. So
2014. I don't know why I was thinking 2017, but I guess that's when you got
2017
here.
is when I came to EXP.
Okay, is when you came to, okay, so you've been doing this. You've been doing this for a while. So you've seen a little bit of upswings, this crazy market and then just this major shift.
Yeah, it's crazy. I got my license in 2012.
Okay.
And it just was inactive for 2 years. Well, I was inactive for 2 years because I was staying with that commercial company. And in 2012, it hadn't really started to take off. 2014, whenever I went full time, I remember maybe 6 months into the business and sitting in an office at Keller Williams, and they're like, okay, we've built this spreadsheet because we're getting 3 and 4 offers at a time.
Okay.
We don't know how to handle this. So we're going to teach y'all. Here's the spreadsheet. Here's how we can break it all out. And now looking back on that, where, you'd list a house and in one day you'd have 10, 15, 20 offers and they're all crazy. And they're just so anything the buyer could do to win, not just price, but all creative, things in the contract. I'm like, yeah, that spreadsheet doesn't work anymore. Yeah. We're going to have to start narrowing these down. But yeah, so I've seen that whole upswing. We bought our house personally in 2000. And then in 2006 or 2007, we were going to buy another house, but being in that real estate space and working with the attorneys at that time, I'm like, wait a minute, how does that contract work? What's that going to mean? So even though I wasn't selling houses, I still went through that.
Okay.
Saw that. I worked for the company doing the facilities management and document management for a company called Sebring Capital. We showed up to Sebring Capital one day in 2008. I had 32 boxes of documents because they were packaging the portfolios and selling them.
Yeah.
And we showed up to their doorstep on a Monday morning. The building was empty. There wasn't a stitch of furniture in that building. A lot. And this is, I don't know, it was like a 10-story building that Sebring had. And I called my mom. I'm like, what are we supposed to do? They're just not here. He's like, I don't know. We'll bring the documents back. Couldn't get a hold of them for like 2 weeks. And then we saw everything that started happening in the news with the 2008 crash. So I was working those documents with those attorneys. So I've seen that part from the residential side as well. And where we're going now, it's crazy. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent.
It is. No, we were talking because we were just going the swings of the marketplace and whatnot, but it really, really is crazy. So you invest in real estate as well?
Yes, ma'am.
How many, do you just single family, multifamily? Single family. Okay.
And we started, the first one we did actually was when I still worked for the commercial company.
Okay.
Doing a reverse mortgage before they were really popular.
Okay.
With my grandparents. And I tell everybody, mindset, right? It's believe it. So like our investor group or anybody, I'm like, if you have $1 saved in the bank and you're actively pursuing investments, you're an investor. Believe that about yourself.
Right.
Tell people that about yourself. So my grandparents just called me one day and they're like, hey, prices are going up. We can't really afford all of our expenses in the mortgage. We got some letter in the mail about a reverse mortgage. We want you to look at it. I'm the only person they know in real estate.
Okay.
So I go look at it. I'm like, man, this is before it's regulated or any of that. I'm like, this is not a good deal. I'm like, but if that's all you need, I'll do that. So me and my wife made the decision. It was tough, right? We had to make those payments every month to them and we had to change the way we lived. But that's what opened the door for us to buy our first property.
Okay.
And we did basically that reverse. We paid their property off and then titled it into our name, and then started making those payments, and eventually Grandpa passed and Grandma had to go live at the retirement community. Okay. So at that point we went in, my wife and I did all the work. We almost got divorced over it.
Uh-oh.
It was, it was definitely something I would not recommend. Like pay the people to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Pay the contractors.
Because when you're both working full-time jobs and you're having to do that nights and weekends, it was difficult.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you got to do it the first time yourself, just understand that's what's going to happen when you're going to. That's going to be stressful. Right. So we get that done. I think all we've ever spent on that was like $60,000.
Okay.
We still own that property to this day. Good. It's paid for, so it cash flows is nice. And then that led to us buying the house next door. Okay. I learned all about how you can take paid off real estate, go to the bank and say, hey, that's paid for. I need a line of credit against it, and then use that line of credit to buy and refinance, and doing the Burr method before I knew the Burr method was a thing. And then that's just how it kind of started. Was that your question?
Yeah. No. That's awesome. No, I was just asking you, invest in real estate. Was it multifamily, single
family? The idea, there's a couple geographic areas where I think are really good for investing in real estate, the price of the property versus the rental income. So we've got some sweet spots. So single family there, but I definitely want to add like duplexes, fourplexes, not quite to like multifamily, you know, apartments yet. But before I got there, I also wanted to do kind of like you were saying, the communities, like duplex communities, and start doing something that benefits people versus just you're the next landlord, you know, making the money or whatever. So that's kind of where we've shifted. And then the last year, it's been very difficult to find the investment properties.
To find the properties. So, well, I work with wholesalers too, so I get a million emails of properties all over the place. And, you know, so I'm trying to always vet that out too. But I just want to tell you guys, you know, us being in real estate, us doing podcasts, and everything that we do, like our plates are full. So then if you're an investor on top of it, and I run a team, a real estate team on top of it, it's like, oh, I just don't have enough hours in the day. So really it's helping me, or really trying to find like, I need to prioritize my time and really what is most important, and where do I need to be dabbling, and where does my time really need to be spent? I mean, of course, time needs to be spent on the team, but investing is really, really important to me. And I haven't invested as much as I'd like to, but another factor in that was the marketplace. You know, we couldn't find deals. We couldn't find things as investors are looking for. So I think it's interesting, this market now, and that we do finally have a little opportunity to negotiate and try to pick up some deals. But what's the statistic? The statistic's like, is it 90% of the millionaires own real estate? It's the vehicle
or keep it through real estate. It's
vehicle
like
to wealth. I mean, it really is.
It is the only thing. I'm gonna give away a little secret here. This last round of inflation that we've went through, right?
Yes.
And I try to articulate this to people. The value of things didn't necessarily go up. Your dollar went down.
Yes.
Right? So the only things that truly kept pace with that inflation that I can find is real estate and food.
Right.
It's the only things you need to live: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, gold, silver, collectible coins, other collectible items. All of that was devalued at the same rate your dollar was, versus look what happened to any real estate you own. Right. It went up with it. And that's one of the keys that wealthy people have kind of figured out to not have their money erode through inflation.
Right.
So that's why it's so important. Also, there's ways that, and this may be a topic for another podcast, specifically on real estate, that you can kind of create money through real estate that doesn't really exist before, right?
Right.
But you can create it. And that's how the wealthy people are able to keep that.
You know, yes. So if you want to learn how to real estate invest, you need to contact myself or Paul for some tips and trips. We can help you.
Yeah.
But talk to me. Let's talk about this as well. Talk to me a little bit about, because I know you were telling your story, and you had said that God had laid on your heart tithing. And what does that mean for you? And what has your journey been with that? And how do you feel about that? And and what do you see? Like, okay, so maybe seeds are planted and reaping rewards. Talk about that.
Okay. So I'll tell you my journey with the tithing, and it's been 12 years ago or so. We used to go to the Oaks Fellowship, and they used to have a program. It was the 12-week tithe challenge or whatever, right? They're like, you start tithing, and if God doesn't come through, we'll refund your money. We're going to keep the tally of everything you've tithed, and we're going to refund it. I don't know that they do it anymore. I don't know why. But so I'm like, okay, God, I just felt it.
To show the power of what it could be. Okay, so
because
go ahead.
A lot of people don't want to take that jump because they're like, how is the 90% going to go further than the 100? It's not possible, right? It's not possible. And all I could hear in my head echoing was God telling me, do not doubt the ways in which I can provide.
Okay,
things you didn't know were going to happen will happen. So anyway, they did that, and I'm like, all right, I'll do it. Oh, the other caveat was you had to enroll in Dave Ramsey's course, like to learn to manage money. Okay. Right. But it was like $100 for the family. So I'm like, all right, we do that. And I learned some good stuff. Dave has some good things to help you get out of debt. And then beyond that, we'll talk later.
Yes. Yeah. Whether or not you believe in what he believes in.
I think for a large majority of the people, it's probably good advice.
Great. Yes.
Because they're not
pay off, be debt free. Right.
They're not going to be, they don't want to deal with the other side of that. Right. So that's fine for them. Anyway, so we do the tithe challenge. And I'm trying to get this linearly correct. So we did the tithe challenge. I'm driving home one day, and I had this is back when I still was working at that commercial company, right before I go into real estate. We do the tithe challenge, and I'm driving home one day, and I've got a old F-150 that's just a gas guzzler. It's terrible, right? And I'm like, God, we're barely making ends meet. We got 3 kids, everything's happening. How am I going to do this? And I just felt like he said, pull over. And I was passing, it's Mack Hike Ford now. I don't remember what it used to be, maybe Chuck Fairbank. So I pulled over in there, and I'm like, all right, how's this going to work? And we'd already made our first tithe or two at this point. I'm like, I'm not seeing this 90% go further. So anyway, I pull in, and I walk up to the car salesman. I'm like, all right, do you have anything? And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm like, do you have anything I could buy that would get me this payment and this down payment? And he's like, actually, I have 2. They're over here. They were a year old. They were brand new cars, but it was coming up on the next year, manufacturer year.
Okay.
And he had a red Focus and a black Focus. And he's like, pick one of these. I'll make it work. We got to get them off the lot. They won't send us new ones. So I said, okay. So we're in there doing the paperwork. I'm like, you're sure? Nothing down. This is what my payment's going to be. And I'm calculating like what is gas, all that good stuff. And in the middle of doing the paperwork, I was like, can you sell me the other? I don't know why. I just felt like ask him, can you sell me the other one also? So I'm like, can you sell me the other one also? He's like, well, yeah, but how's this going to work? I called my wife, and I was like, hey, she had a Jeep at the time, and it started having problems.
Okay.
It was expensive and gas guzzler. She drove it down there, and I said, well, if we trade that one in, can we buy the other one? Long story short, we traded in the Jeep. I kept the truck, and the car payments on both those cars, plus what we're spending monthly in gas, was cheaper than the Jeep and driving the truck every day. Okay. And I just hear him just pull over. So I'm like, okay, pull over here. And how that worked, I would have never just walked into a dealership and be like, hey, I need to trade in all these gas guzzlers and for 2 brand new cars, right? They're old, junky cars, and it's going to be cheaper than that.
Right.
So that was the first, like, hey, here's how that's going to go further. So I tithed for a while, just the 10%, the normal. The program ended, and I could see, hey, man, stuff's just happening. It's just happening. When I went into business for myself, 2014, okay, how do I do this tithe thing? Because I'm not getting a check anymore, right? So there's no check. Is it on my business? Is it on me? What is it after taxes? How do I do? And then so I'm praying about it, and I just heard God again in my head. Do you want me to bless you, or do you want me to bless your business? I'm like, well, I want to bless the business, right?
Okay,
the business
I'm like,
is going
I
to
guess
bless
you're
me,
right.
right?
I'm like,
financially, right?
Yes.
I can make the 90 go further. So I was like, okay, on the business. So I started tithing on the business before expenses. It's like I got the commission check, 10%. Okay. Right? And then I figured out the rest. And the business just kept growing, and he kept giving me the people, and the business kept growing. Then, and I don't think I told you this part, it was 3 years ago now, we're in 2023. I felt like he told me you need to tithe 20%. Okay. And I'm like, 20%? I'm like, yeah. And then it dawned on me like the money from their rental properties, because I don't take the money, I don't tithe on any of that, or, it just kind of goes back into itself. So, okay, I'll do 20%, that's going to be hard. And then COVID hit and all these other things happened, but we did 20% and he doubled our business. So I'm doing the 20%. And I'm like, I still do it to this day. I don't question it. Like I felt like he told me to do it. Right. And you don't know how you're going to live on 80%. Think about having to go from where you're at now to 80%. Right. Mathematically, it does not make sense. But the opportunity that is afforded to you in that is phenomenal. Right. I mean, it's just insane. So, I think it's, I think it's awesome. Tingles.
Like, I don't necessarily have a church home. And it's funny that I didn't know it was the Oaks, but when I do go somewhere to church, it's the Oaks. I love it. I feel God there. I really like it. I like the pastor. But I don't go to church regularly. Right. So I'm not tithing, but I tithe in different ways. Okay. So I may come across somebody, I'll leave it at that, because I feel like sometimes, you're not telling me where, what's, that's really being used for, and it's going to the church. But for me, I do different things by giving back, and I think God does definitely bless me. But I think what's interesting too, the fact that God tells you pull over, something of that nature, and you're kind of like right here, right now.
It doesn't make sense. Are you sure, God?
Yes,
sure?
And I think it's so funny, because when you do hear his voice and he tells you to do these things, and I'm kind of like, I remember specifically sitting at a gas station looking over at a gentleman. He had a camera hanging on his chest, and God said, go talk to him. And I'm like, did I really just hear this? But he's like, yes, go talk to him. And I'm like, I don't want to go up to this man. And then not to mention, I'm a female, you know what I mean? And so but lo and behold, I go and I talk to this gentleman. And I said, hi, my name is Chrissy, and I see that you got this nifty camera hanging around your neck. Tell me what's going on. And I didn't, I don't know what to. And so in the end, these guys were ministry from California that were going all over the world. They were on bikes.
Bicycles?
No, motorcycles.
Okay.
So on bikes, but there was a truck, and I guess it was the camera guy with all his equipment and whatnot. And what's interesting is he was talking about, we're trying to, get awareness and whatnot for recovery. And I'm like, recovery? Like recovering alcoholics and drug addicts? And he said, yes. And I date Tim, and that's exactly what he does. He's, ministry for recovery, which is Recovery Road in Red Oak. But, I thought, what? So I start talking to him, and they were like, you know what? We want to put you on camera right now. Are you willing to do it? I'm like, heck yeah.
I'll do it.
Like, let's do this. And he's getting ready to interview me, and I'm like, talking to me questions, and I just start going off, blah, 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 praise God, listen, this is how he's going to do it. And he goes, go on, sister. You just keep on talking.
Keep telling the story.
But in the end, we chatted, and I said, I don't know what this is about, but, my boyfriend's in recovery, and I said, I don't know if this is bringing people together, like from different ministries, from, different places around the U.S. or whatnot. We do stay in communication somewhat on Facebook, but, my fault. I probably need to reach out, a little bit more to him. But if I wouldn't have been obedient, and if I wouldn't have gone to him and talked to him, this encounter would have never happened. And these guys were like, you know what, girl, we like that so much. We're getting ready to our next, so Sunday when he was going to go back home and be in his church, he goes, we're going to show this video. We're going to post it on Facebook. I'm going to stay in touch with you. And he's done everything that he said he was going to do. And I thought for sure walking away like, this ain't going to happen. I'm like, whatever. But yes, he's a man of God, and he's a man of his word, and he is going to, he was doing his thing for God. And I just think it's awesome. But sometimes he tells us to do things that we're just like, what? Like, this doesn't make sense. Yes.
In our mind, in our limited, it doesn't make sense, but it's that grand. He created everything, and he knows how it works, and he knows what's coming. So
it's all about later.
Yeah, it's all about later.
Positioning us, orchestrating all of that for later. So I just think it's interesting. But Paul, I just want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and being here.
Thank you.
I'm definitely going to to get to know you even more.
I think there's a reason. Yeah, there's absolutely a reason that we're doing the podcast at the same time, that we're going through the same parts of our journey at the same time. Just encouraging each other and being obedient. I mean, just a quick story on obedience. So, you're in real estate, right? So you're making your calls, you're doing your prospecting, you're doing your follow-ups, and then one of them sold a house to an investor. And I'm like, we've been working on this for a year, and I've been with you every step of the way. And then now all of a sudden, because it was easier, and so I kind of got dejected a little bit. And I've kind of doing the podcast and doing video that I've started really all in on video. Doing less prospects. I'm like, okay, well now I've lost them, and what's going to come here? And then we just calculated this morning actually that the video has brought in 4 new clients, which I'm not calling them. I'm not, I'm spending the time. And the video isn't, hey, call me.
Right.
Hey, let me be your listing.
No,
the video
you just may be educational. Or,
education, serving people. Hey, did you know you need to do this for taxes? Hey, did you know you need to make these repairs in your home?
Right.
When the storm came, I did a quick little video on here's how you, in your garden tub in your bathroom, will have an access panel. Open that so that it doesn't freeze, because it happened to us 2 years ago.
Wow.
But doing that video.
Darn, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And so I'm like, wait a minute. All these things.
You do need to, Yeah,
that you're just serving people.
Right.
I feel like God said, you're going to do the podcast. And the podcast that I do it's not necessarily in faith or about faith. It's just about encouraging, empowering, and enlightening other people. So it always goes to faith. That's kind of weird. Right. Or interesting. I shouldn't say weird. So it's in obedience with him, and through doing the podcast, I'm saying do the video to go help people. I know it doesn't make sense because you're not calling 100 people a day, and you're not making all these contacts, and you're not doing everything that all of real estate has told you is what you need to do to be successful. I'm telling you, go serve these people in this capacity and other things, not just the video and the podcast, but go serve these people.
Which he's
and
bringing the
bringing
people.
The
I'm tingling all over
that.
because honestly, you know, if you follow me at all on the podcast, you know that this is divine design is divinely designed. I mean, through my journaling, praying, and meditating, God gave me this. You're supposed to do this podcast and whatnot. And then talking with Paul, I'm like, Paul, this is like a second business. Oh my God, just everything to learn. And, you know, the people, you need to get them in, you know, just everything. You have to organize topics, this, and which God did give me all my topics. But this is truly like running a second business. And I didn't expect all of this.
How much it takes to do it. Yeah, people don't realize.
How much time, everything. And what's happening is divine design is taking so much of my time that the real estate, you know, I'm definitely giving to my team and whatnot, but I'm necessarily not doing as many deals. And really, I am I'm the one on my team that does the most transactions. And so I'm sitting here going, all right, God, I trust you. And I know that you will provide, because last year, even though this was all formulated, and I kind of feel like I had kind of 1 foot out of the business, he provided, and he provided well. And so I'm like, okay. And so this time I'm like, all right, I trust you, but I'm almost like, how's this going to happen? You know, so here the human me, you know, worldly world, human me is like, how's this going to happen? Wait a minute. You know, I have tons of expenses. How's this all going to work? And I believe just by us being obedient and keep on doing what we're doing, and you branching out, maybe doing a couple different little videos and whatnot, that he will provide, because we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, you know, for him. And I believe really it's all about bringing people to Jesus, loving one another. And that's truly what this is all about.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just that. And the more relationships that I've formed as I've walked the 2 years without Steve and whatnot, and I feel like changing my life. I mean, he's brought some people into my life that these are meaningful relationships. Yes. These are some powerful, you know, people, but these are some people that truly love, and some people that are willing to get extremely vulnerable. And I believe connections are made through that vulnerability for sure. Probably more
Good
so
connections,
you know,
true
yes,
connections.
yeah, probably more so than just you and me, real estate professional, talking about podcasts. But if I was to come to you and go like, Paul, I just had the worst day of my life, and this is just what happened to me personally, and blah, 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 blah. And we actually talked about that. We might have a little bit of a stronger connection. You know, you might think about like, hey, girl, I'm going to text her like, girl, just thinking about you today. Like, you were just laid on my heart. Now, that happens with me and people, you know, regardless, but more so with these folks that I've built these connections with. And it's truly because we all are walking differently, like you and Amy are, you know, where we do say we give everything to God and we are trusting, you know. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
And I love your passion. I love what you're about. I love what you're doing. I do believe that God is going to bless you in many, many ways. Absolutely. And bless everybody that, you know, you touch. And I'm glad that you're willing to be used as a vehicle, you know, just because I'm continuing like, God, just use me. I just want your will for my life. I don't care about all this crap anymore. Right. You know, of course, yes, I want to teach people, and I want to, you know, I want to be able to eat myself, right. You know, but all in all, it's showing me that there are things out there that are bigger, you know, better, more powerful. And it's not about me. I really have to kind of lose myself. And what I mean by that is self-absorbed, self-centeredness, whatnot, let go, and trust in the Lord. And you cannot be doing both of those at the same time.
You can't have your foot in both pools. You can't serve two gods. You got to be, and God doesn't expect you to day one be all in. Right. He's going to
It is a process.
You, right. Yes. He's going to walk you through that. Yes. And I don't, just a little word of encouragement, like we've said on the podcast, and I've heard you say, I don't know how this is going to work or how God's going to do this. One of the things I've tried doing, and that I've seen other people do with success, and I would encourage you to do, instead of saying, I don't know how this is going to, which when you change the way you look at things, you look at change, right? Start trying to incorporate, I can't wait to see how.
Okay, perfect.
So I don't know how you're going to do it, but I can't wait to see how you're going to do it.
And that's funny that you said that, because all those people that I'm talking about, those meaningful relationships with, we continue to always say, like, I can't wait to see what God does with you. I can't wait to see what God does with this situation. Yep. So I guess that's what I'll say. We're going to end it with that. I can't wait to see what God does with Scotch Tape, and I can't wait to see what God does with divine design.
And with what God's going to do with everyone listening and who's encouraged, enlightened, and empowered by this podcast, because I believe it's going to change people, and it's going to reach the right audience, and people's lives are going to be impacted. So thank you for
You're
doing what
awesome. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for coming. All right, guys, until next time.